My wife cheated on me with our neighbor, and now she's claiming half of our $850, $0 house and $200, $0 in savings. After secretly moving $50, $0 of my inheritance to her sister, and I just found out she's planning to file for divorce during our court hearing. I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this, honestly. It all started with little things: missed calls, strange messages, her being overly defensive when I asked about her whereabouts. But the real shocker came one night when I came home unexpectedly early from a business trip. I had a gut feeling something was off, and I decided to check her phone. That's when I saw the messages. It was a string of flirty texts between her and our neighbor, Mark, something about meeting up, secret plans, and coded language that made my stomach turn. I couldn't believe what I was reading. My wife, Lisa, was cheating on me with the guy next door. I felt numb, like the floor had disappeared beneath me. I mean, we had a pretty good life: an $850, $0 house, a hefty savings account, and two kids I loved more than anything. But this was a punch to the gut. I had always trusted her, or so I thought. And now here I was, holding proof that she'd been lying to my face for months. I read those messages over and over, trying to process what I'd just seen. It wasn't like she just kissed him once and it was over. No, this was ongoing. They met up multiple times, apparently, and she'd even lied about going out with friends when she was actually with Mark. That night I sat there in the dark, staring at her phone like it was a bomb about to explode. My mind was racing. How could she do this? How could she betray everything we built? Our marriage, our family, the trust. I felt a fiery mix of rage and heartbreak. I wanted to confront her immediately, but I knew I needed to plan. This wasn't something I could just blurt out in anger. I had to think carefully about what to say, how to approach her, and most importantly, how to protect myself and what was mine. The next morning, I decided I couldn't keep this secret anymore. I woke her up early, and I told her I knew about the affair, her face twisted into a mask of annoyance and denial. "You're overreacting, Mike," she snapped, brushing her hair back. "You're just paranoid. I don't know what you're talking about." But I had the evidence. I laid her phone on the table, showing her the messages. Her eyes widened for a second, then she scoffed and threw her head back. "That's nothing. You're just jealous because I look better than her. It's not a big deal." I was furious. How could she lie so easily? She was calling me paranoid, but I wasn't crazy. I knew what I saw, and I knew that this wasn't just a fling, it was something serious. She was cheating on me, our neighbor, Mark, the guy who'd always been friendly and helpful, but now I saw he was just a pawn in her game. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and completely lost. The worst part: she kept insisting that I was overreacting, that I was just insecure, and that she'd never cheat on me. She even had the nerve to accuse me of not paying enough attention, of being distant. Yeah, I'd been busy with work, but nothing I did justified this. Betrayal. She claimed she loved me, that it was just a mistake, that she was sorry. But I could see right through her lies. She was planning her next move, and I knew I had to do something before it got worse. That's when I started to realize that this wasn't just about the affair. It was about the money, the house, everything we built together. She's always been the kind of person to manipulate situations, and now I saw she was trying to turn the tables on me. She's already talking about splitting the house, claiming half of our $850, $0 property, and she's got her eyes on the savings, which she's trying to justify as community funds. But then I found out she secretly moved $50, $0 of my inheritance, money I was saving for the kids, to her sister. I felt sick. How could she do that behind my back? It's like she's trying to take everything from me, even the little I had left to fall back on. I knew I had to act fast. This wasn't just about catching her cheating. It was about protecting what's mine: my house, my savings, my inheritance. I started to gather evidence, documents, anything I could find. I spoke to a lawyer, and I realized she might try to file for divorce during the court hearing, claiming I was the one who was distant or unfaithful. That thought made my blood boil. She's trying to spin this story her way, but I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Honestly, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. Part of me wants to fight for the marriage, to forgive and forget, but another part just wants her out and to keep what's mine. I feel like I've been punched in the gut and I'm just trying to breathe. I never thought I'd be in this position, but here I am, trying to piece my life back together after the biggest betrayal I've ever experienced. After I confronted Lisa that morning, things only got messier. She threw a fit, yelled, called me paranoid, accused me of spying on her. Her face got all bitchy and defensive, like she thought she could just brush this off. She kept insisting she hadn't done anything wrong, that I was just jealous and insecure, that the messages I found were nothing, just friendly chatter. But I wasn't buying it. I'd seen enough to know that was a complete lie. She sat there trying to gaslight me, telling me I was overreacting, that she loved me and the kids, and that I was just making a mountain out of a molehill. Meanwhile, her phone kept buzzing with messages from Mark. I could see the way she looked at her phone when she thought I wasn't paying attention. The way she suddenly became cold and distant whenever I brought up the subject of the affair. It was obvious she was hiding something. And her excuses, pathetic. She said she'd been stressed, that Mark was just a friend, that nothing was going on. Yeah, right, I'd seen her texts, the late-night calls, the miss you messages. She lied straight to my face, and I felt a mix of anger and heartbreak that I couldn't even process properly. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything I'd found out, trying to make sense of it. How long had she been doing this? How many times? Was I just blind, or did I ignore the signs? She'd been acting weird for months, coming home late, making excuses, being bitch and dismissive when I asked about her day. I'd always thought she was just stressed or tired. Now I realized she'd been hiding this affair right under my nose. It was a slap in the face. Next morning, I decided I needed facts, solid proof, if I was going to do anything. I started digging into our bank accounts and found more red flags. She transferred $50, $0 of my inheritance, money I'd set aside for the kids or emergencies, right into her sister's account. I couldn't believe it. How could she do that without telling me? That's not just betrayal, that's theft. I knew then I needed to be ready for a fight. I contacted a lawyer that afternoon. She advised me to gather all financial documents, bank statements, proof of the inheritance transfer, and any evidence of her affair. I also started documenting her behavior, her lies, her secretive texts, everything I could find. I didn't want her to spin some story that I was the one cheating or that I was the bad guy. I was furious, but knew I had to stay calm if I wanted to protect what was mine. And then I learned that Lisa was planning to file for divorce during the upcoming court hearing. That was the last straw. She was scheming behind my back, trying to cut me out of everything we had. She'd been talking to her lawyer, trying to figure out how to claim half the house, our $850, $0 home, and split the savings which I had worked hard for. She's always been good at manipulating situations, and now I saw she was trying to make herself the victim. She kept insisting she was entitled to her fair share, even though she'd been cheating and stealing from me. I felt a cold rage boiling inside. I knew I had to act fast. I started planning my response, thinking about how to counter her moves. I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything, especially not the house I paid for, the savings I'd accumulated, or the inheritance I'd earned. I decided I'd fight for my rights, for my kids, and for what was rightfully mine. I wasn't just going to sit back and let her take everything, no matter how bitchy or manipulative she was being. At the same time, I couldn't help feeling devastated. I'd loved Lisa, trusted her, built this life. With her, now all I could see was betrayal. It's like my entire world was collapsing around me. I kept asking myself how I missed the signs, how I didn't see that she was planning this all along. The anger and sadness were overwhelming. I felt betrayed not just by her cheating, but by all the lies she told me daily, pretending everything was fine when it was. I also realized I had to prepare for the worst. If she was planning to file for divorce, I needed to have my ducks in a row. I started compiling everything: bank statements, texts, emails, proof of the inheritance transfer, even her plans to split the house. I knew she'd try to spin this against me, twist the story to make herself look innocent, but I was determined to be ready. I couldn't let her manipulate her way out of this, especially not when it came to the house and our savings. The emotional toll, It's hard to describe. I go from furious to numb, back to feeling betrayed. I don't sleep well anymore. I feel this constant weight in my chest, like I'm carrying the whole world on my shoulders. At times, I look at her and wonder how she could be so bitchy and selfish, lying, cheating, then trying to claim half of everything we built. It's like she's a different person, someone I don't even recognize. But I also know I have to be strong. For myself, for my kids, for whatever's left of this mess. I'm preparing for a fight and I'm not going down without a battle. I've learned that people can surprise you, sometimes in the worst ways, and that trust is fragile. I trusted her, and she threw it all away for some cheap affair with Mark. Now I just want to come out of this with whatever I can. I don't know what the future holds, but I know I won't let her take everything without a fight. The days that followed felt like walking through a fog. Every morning I woke up with that sick feeling in my stomach, knowing that Lisa was scheming behind my back. I kept thinking about her bitchy attitude, how she kept denying everything even when I had proof. It was like talking to a wall. She'd spin stories, deny the affair, and accuse me of being paranoid or controlling. That's classic. Lisa, blame everyone else for her mistakes. But I wasn't falling for it anymore. I'd seen enough to know she was lying, and I was determined to prove it. I spent hours reviewing bank statements, digging into her phone records, and even installing a discreet app to monitor her texts when I could. I knew she was planning something, probably trying to get ahead of the game, maybe even trying to file for divorce first to keep me from claiming my rights. That's when I realized I had to act fast. I couldn't let her manipulate the situation, especially with the house and the savings. One afternoon, I found that she'd transferred another $10, $0 to her sister's account. That was just the tip of the iceberg. I couldn't believe she was doing this behind my back, secretly siphoning off money meant for the kids' future, all while pretending to be the innocent wife. It made my blood boil. I felt like I was losing control of everything I'd worked for, our home, our savings, my inheritance. She was trying to take it all, and I knew I had to stop her. I met with my lawyer again, showing him everything I'd uncovered. He advised me to file a motion to freeze our joint accounts and to start gathering evidence of her plans to file for divorce. He also warned me that Lisa might try to claim half the house, even though I paid for most of it. That was a punch to the gut, but I was ready. I'd been saving every document, every text, every financial transfer. I told him I wanted to fight for the house, for my inheritance, and to make sure she couldn't just walk away with everything. Meanwhile, Lisa kept up her act, acting innocent, bitching about how I was overreacting, saying she was just stressed, and accusing me of being controlling. She'd call me paranoid, then give me those cold, bitchy looks when she thought I wasn't paying attention. I could see her trying to manipulate the situation, trying to turn everyone against me. She even started talking about divorce in front of the kids, as if she was already planning her escape. That's when I realized she was serious about leaving, about taking everything and running. One night, I caught her trying to pack a bag. I confronted her and she snapped at me, saying she needed space and that she was done with the lies. I told her I knew about her affair, her money moves everything. Her face twisted again, that bitchy smirk she always had when she thought she was winning. She said, "You're just jealous, Mike. You're insecure. I deserve better than this." That was the moment I knew I had to be even more strategic. I couldn't let her get away with this, not without a fight. I also started thinking about how to protect my kids from the fallout. I didn't want them to get caught in the middle of her manipulations. I decided I'd get a custody lawyer, just in case she tried to take them and run. I already knew she was planning to file during the court hearing, trying to claim she was the victim. But I had proof of her cheating, her secret transfers, her lies. I wasn't going to let her spin a story that painted her as the innocent victim. I had enough evidence to show she was the one betraying us all. The emotional roller coaster was brutal. I felt betrayed, angry, and deeply hurt. I'd loved Lisa for years, trusted her with everything, and now I saw her for what she really was: selfish, manipulative, a liar. Every time I looked at her bitchy face, I felt a mix of disgust and sadness. I kept asking myself how I didn't see the signs earlier, how I missed the hints that she was planning this all along. I kept thinking about the money, the house, the inheritance, and how she was trying to steal it all. It was like waking up from a nightmare, but the nightmare was real and I was living it. I also knew that I couldn't let her get away with her schemes. If she filed for divorce first, she'd try to claim half the house, even though I paid for most of it, and she'd probably try to get her hands on the savings which I'd worked hard for. So I started to prepare my side. I contacted a financial advisor to help me evaluate what I could protect, and I started drafting a plan to counter her moves in court. I wanted to make sure she couldn't just walk away with everything. The worst part, I realized that Lisa's bitchy attitude wasn't just about her being manipulative. It was about control. She thought she could do whatever she wanted, lie, cheat, steal, and I'd never catch her. But I did, and now I was furious. I felt like I'd been blindsided by someone I'd trusted completely. The betrayal cut deep, and I knew it was going to take a long time to heal from this. I was just trying to hold myself together, to stay strong for my kids, and to figure out how I was going to fight for what was rightfully mine. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal meetings, financial scrutiny, and emotional exhaustion. I threw myself into the fight, gathering every shred of evidence I could find. Lisa's bitchy attitude only intensified as she realized I was serious about fighting for the house and our savings. She started throwing tantrums, calling me controlling, accusing me of trying to ruin her, and insisting she was the victim. But I knew her game now. I saw through her lies, her manipulations, and her desperate attempts to turn everyone against me. She kept insisting she hadn't cheated. "You're just paranoid," she'd say, yet her texts told a different story. I had proof of her secret meetings, her flirty messages with Mark, and her attempts to hide her tracks. I also found out she'd been secretly moving money around, trying to hide her financial misdeeds. Each new discovery made me more furious. She was trying to take everything I worked for, and I wasn't going to let her. One day, I caught her trying to transfer another $20, $0 to her sister's account. That was the last straw. I immediately contacted my lawyer and told him I wanted a court order to freeze all joint accounts. I couldn't trust her anymore. She was scheming to drain our savings, to hide her assets, and to claim the house she hadn't paid for. I was furious. How could she be so bitchy and selfish? It was like she didn't care about the damage she was doing to our family, only about her own selfish ambitions. Meanwhile, Lisa was still insisting she was innocent, that I was just insecure and jealous. She'd throw her bitchy little fits whenever I pressed her on her lies. "You're just controlling," she'd snap. "I can't believe you're accusing me of cheating." But I had all the proof I needed now, and I was about to let her spin her web of lies. I started documenting everything: her suspicious texts, her secret transfers, her manipulative behavior, and kept a detailed record to use in court. The most shocking moment came when she announced she was planning to file for divorce during the upcoming court hearing. That's when I knew she was trying to cut her losses and get out before I could fight for my rights. She was already talking to her lawyer, trying to figure out how to claim half the house, even though I'd paid most of the mortgage. That bitchy attitude of hers was all about control. She thought she could just manipulate her way out of this mess and walk away with everything. I was overwhelmed with a mix of anger, sadness, and frustration. I'd loved her once, believed in our marriage, and now I was fighting to save what little I could of my life. I'd been betrayed not just by her cheating, but by her manipulative attempts to steal from me. I couldn't believe how selfish she was. She'd lied, cheated, transferred money behind my back, and now she was trying to turn the legal system against me. It felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Despite everything, I decided I wouldn't go down without a fight. I hired a forensic accountant to help me trace her financial moves, and I started preparing my case to ensure I could keep the house and the savings. I knew she'd try to claim she was entitled to half, but I had the receipts, the bank statements, and the texts to prove she was the one betraying us all. I also started working on a plan to get full custody of the kids, knowing she'd try to turn them against me with her bitchy, manipulative ways. Emotionally, I was wrecked. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and angry all at once. It was hard to look at her without feeling disgusted. I kept asking myself how I missed the signs, how I let myself be blindsided like this. I thought I knew her, but she turned out to be someone I didn't recognize anymore. Selfish, manipulative, a liar. I'd trusted her with everything, and she'd thrown it all away for a quick affair and her own greed. I also realized I had to stay strong, not just for myself but for my kids. They deserved stability and honesty, not a mother who was more interested in her own schemes. I started working on my emotional resilience, trying to keep my head clear so I could fight this legally and financially. I knew she'd do everything she could to try to spin the story her way, but I had the proof. I was determined to come out of this with some dignity intact and to protect what was left of my life. This whole ordeal has been a wake-up call. I never imagined I'd be in this situation, caught in a legal battle, fighting to keep what's mine, betrayed by someone I loved. But I've learned that trust is fragile, and some people will do anything to get what they want. My advice to anyone in a similar position: stay vigilant, keep records. Don't underestimate how manipulative a bitchy partner can be when they think they can get away with it. And most importantly, don't let them destroy what you've worked so hard for. Because at the end of the day, protecting yourself and your future is all that matters. The courtroom battles started to take over my life. Every day I was poring over documents, trying to anticipate Lisa's next move. She was relentless, bitchy, manipulative, trying to paint herself as the victim. She'd sit there in court, acting innocent, crying fake tears, claiming she'd been pushed to her limit. Meanwhile, I had stacks of evidence showing her affair, her secret transfers, her lies about the house. It was like fighting a snake, slick, dangerous, and trying to evade my grasp at every turn. Her lawyer was equally bitchy, trying to twist every fact I presented. She'd claim I was controlling, that I was emotionally abusive, that I'd been distant. Lisa's strategy was clear. She wanted to make me look like the bad guy so she could justify getting half the house, half the savings, and full custody of the kids. Honestly, it infuriated me. She was trying to manipulate the legal system, using her bitchy attitude to force her way through, all while secretly planning to leave me with nothing. I fought back with every ounce of strength I had. I presented the bank statements proving her transfers, the texts revealing her affair, and the timeline of her lies. I even hired a private investigator to confirm her meetings with Mark. It was brutal, but I had to do it. I couldn't let her get away with stealing everything I'd worked for. I also filed for full custody of the kids, knowing she'd try to turn them against me with her bitchy manipulations. I wanted to keep them away from her toxic attitude and her constant lies. One particularly bitter day in court, Lisa sat there with her bitchy smirk and tried to claim she was the victim. She said I'd been controlling, distant, and that I'd never loved her. She even said I was the one cheating, which was a lie, but she's good at twisting stories. I sat there, seething, knowing that her real game was trying to get the house and the savings while she played innocent. The judge looked at her with a mix of skepticism and annoyance, but Lisa's bitchy attitude seemed to sway some of the court's sympathy. That's when I realized how dangerous her manipulative tactics could be. Meanwhile, I was working on my own strategy. I hired a financial expert to evaluate what I could protect legally. I knew she'd try to claim half of everything, but I wanted to make sure I kept the house, our biggest asset. I also started preparing for a worst-case scenario. She might try to take full custody, so I hired a custody lawyer and began documenting my interactions with the kids, making sure I had a record of my involvement. I wanted to prove I was a stable, loving father who deserved to keep his children. The emotional toll was enormous. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious, mostly at myself for trusting her so blindly. I kept asking how I missed the signs, how I didn't see her bitchy manipulations coming. Every time I looked at her, I felt a surge of anger and disgust. She was so good at pretending to be innocent, so good at playing the victim. But I knew the truth, and I was determined to fight for what was rightfully mine. I also realized I had to keep my head clear. Her bitchy attitude was just a smokescreen. Beneath it was a woman who'd cheat, steal, and manipulate to get what she wanted. I couldn't let her win. I had to stay strong, hold my ground, and make sure the court saw through her lies. I kept reminding myself that this wasn't just about money or the house. It was about dignity, respect, and protecting my kids from her toxic influence. Every day felt like a battle, but I refused to give up. I'd come too far to let her walk all over me. I knew she'd keep trying to manipulate the system, but I had enough evidence now to fight her every step of the way. I just had to stay calm, stay focused, and be prepared for whatever she threw at me next. Because I realized more than anything that her bitchy attitude wasn't just a personality trait, it was a weapon she was wielding to get her way. And I was determined not to let her win. The final court hearing was a hell of a day. I went in knowing I had everything on my side: proof of her affair, the financial transfers, the texts, the timeline of her lies. Lisa, of course, showed up with her usual bitchy smirk, trying to look innocent while spinning her manipulative stories. She was desperately trying to sway the judge, claiming I was controlling, distant, and that she deserved half the house because she was entitled to her fair share. But I wasn't about to let her get away with it. I laid out my evidence methodically. I showed the court the bank statements with her transfers, highlighted her secret meetings with Mark, and presented the texts where she openly flirted and planned her affair. I told the judge about how she secretly moved money to her sister, trying to hide her financial schemes. I also brought in my forensic accountant's report, which confirmed her attempts to drain our savings and hide assets. I could see her bitchy attitude falter under the weight of the truth. She tried to argue, to cry, to act innocent, but the evidence was damning. In the end, the judge made a ruling that I was grateful for. I was awarded primary custody of the kids, and the house stayed in my name. The court also ordered Lisa to return the stolen money and pay restitution for the transfers she made without my knowledge. She looked furious, her bitchy smirk replaced with a look of defeat. But even then, she kept trying to spin her story, insisting she was the victim and that I was the one who'd betrayed her. It was pathetic, really, how far she'd go to cling to her manipulative ways. As I walked out of the courtroom, I felt a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. I had fought hard and I'd won in the end. The house was mine and I had custody of my kids. I knew Lisa wouldn't just accept defeat quietly. She'd always be that bitchy, manipulative person trying to twist things to her advantage. But I was done playing her game. I had learned to be cautious, to protect myself and my family, and to trust my instincts. Looking back, I realize how much I've grown through this ordeal. I learned that trust can be broken in a heartbeat, and that some people are capable of betrayal on a level you never expect. I also learned that standing up for yourself, gathering evidence, and fighting legally is the only way to protect what's yours. Lisa's bitchy attitude and manipulations didn't win her anything. She lost everything she tried to steal, and she left with nothing but her own bitterness. Now, I'm rebuilding my life. The house is quiet again, the kids are happy, and I'm finally able to breathe without that constant weight of betrayal hanging over me. I still feel the sting of what happened, but I also feel stronger. I know I'll never let someone manipulate me like that again. Trust is fragile and I've learned to be more cautious. But I also know that I'm capable of fighting for what's right and protecting what I love. To anyone going through something similar, trust your gut, keep records, and don't be afraid to stand your ground. People like Lisa, with their bitchy manipulations and false apologies, will try to tear you down. But in the end, truth and evidence will always prevail. Stay strong, stay vigilant, and remember that your integrity and dignity are worth fighting for.